Starting now. I even have a Post-it note, press record. I'm too excited. I am recording this tonight. So this is, we're actually in a Zoom meeting right now. You can't tell, it's all on my computer. This owl right here has a giant camera on the top as well as speakers and microphones. So there will be a Zoom recording. I'm in a recording on the library YouTube page. I'm gonna have to open it, make sure everything worked, edit it, stuff like that, and then upload it to the library's YouTube page. So just Google search Boulder Junction Public Library YouTube and you'll find my page and find the video sometime next week. So if you know of anybody who couldn't make it tonight or who cannot get out of the house, that would be a great thing. And then it's going to be there forever. So again, part of our maintaining and retaining our history is this video will be there forever. And then I have to just warn everybody something. I'm a library director. I'm not a historian. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a professor. Now we all know library directors have really good research skills, but we also have full-time jobs in addition to these projects. So I did my best. And I know you guys are going to think of things tonight that I didn't include in this program. They're going to think of things that I didn't mention. There's a lot. There's probably a semester course of the knowledge you can talk about the fishing guides, fishing, resorts, all of our history in Boulder Junction. So please give me some grace that I have tried my best to give you as much information as possible tonight. So I do want to name my program sources. I'm not going to read these out loud, but I do want to acknowledge that I didn't make this up and I didn't just Google it. We did find good sources for this, and it is our 2 history books. This book, Lanny can hold that up, The Guides of Boulder Junction, or Guides of the Wisconsin Northwoods by Tom Hollitz. I used Buckshot's book, Real People, Fishy Tales About the Outdoors. I'm sorry, that was Tom Hollitz's. I used Buckshot's book, Hall of Fame Brothers, about Porter and Pop Dean. I also borrowed some stuff from the Manitowish Waters Historical Society because they've already done some research. I also used the University of Wisconsin-Madison libraries, and of course, stories and photos from guides that have talked to me. This is in our history book, and I think it is absolutely beautiful. There is beauty in Boulder Junction, which the hand of God hath brought, along the highway and the byway that the sons of man have sought. There are hidden lakes and valleys, there are springs along the way, there are brooks and mighty rivers calling men to come and play. There are temples in the forest, arched with beauty neath the sky. There are churches on the hillsides telling men that God is nigh. So this was in the Boulder Junction, a Boulder Junction tourism promotional booklet. Kind of gives you an idea that there is a reason people started coming here. There's a reason why people decided Boulder Junction was the place to visit fishing and tourism. Sorry, I got my first. So this is that promotional booklet that I talked about. Sorry, the copy is not a good copy. This is a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy probably. But it is one of the early promotional booklets that the group of Chamber of Commerce people, Bruce Wilson, one of them, started to promote Boulder Junction many years ago. So when I began this research project, I decided a timeline was the best way to go. So we kind of had a feel for how it all fell into place. This timeline is not complete because what I'm focusing on is how it relates to fishing and fishing guides. In the back of both historical history books is a more complete timeline that also talks about businesses that were opened, families that started homesteads here, other things that were going on in the state, other things that were going on in the nation. So I just wanted to kind of give an idea of when this all kind of started. So you're talking about the 1800s and the logging camps. You're talking about the land being ceded, and so it was available for either the resort owners, for homesteaders. And then you start to get into the history of when people started coming up here, what kind of projects they started. So they would build a lodge. The lodge would eventually become a resort. 1890s, the summer tourists begin to arrive. We become a vacation retreat. Wagons and stages had to link us because the railroads didn't make it all the way up here in the 1890s. And then you had very popular magazines like Shields and Forest and Stream advertising the hunting and fishing opportunities with local guides. So we were getting some nationwide attention for what we have to offer. Again, I'm listing different resorts, different people that started up here. I'm not gonna read every single one. There's a little bit of history in this about where the Dairyman's Country Club got their property. And then in 1903, things start to happen with the railroad. We've officially become the hub with the name Boulder Junction in 1903, even though it actually isn't printed on the table until 1905. And then 1905, a great thing happens and the logging train starts bringing summer visitors to the Trout Lake Station. So now we've gotten a little bit closer. It's a little bit easier to get here. A.B. Dick's family, we all probably have heard about how their land became Dairyman's Country Club. Jim Bokern talked about in his talk in June about how the Northern Highland State Forest happened, how that came about with buyout of the land. And then another great thing happens, the Milwaukee Road in 1913, the Milwaukee Road buys out the Velasco line, which I believe was around Arborvita, and extends service from Trout Lake, and now they're gonna bring them all the way to Boulder Junction. No surprise, shortly after that, the train company starts a fisherman's special. Trains came up every summer weekend from Chicago, toting as many as 14 passenger cars filled with visitors bound for the resort towns. No surprise, the trains traveled on Friday and Sunday nights. If you've ever driven on 51 on Friday or Sunday, you know exactly what it was like. And again, listing the different people that bought different lodges. Want to point out that in 1923, Floyd and Hazel Williams established Camp Milo Lodge on White Sand Lake. Don and Marion Swanson took over, and Marion is Tom's mom. And I also had to just put it in here. Marion lived to nearly 100 years of age and was the nicest person ever. Love Marion. So we kind of see how this timeline is shifting from logging, state forests, resorts, private land holdings. 1927, woo-hoo, we are officially a distinct and separate township. 1931, the last passenger train comes to Boulder Junction. The Milwaukee Road abandons it, but they do decide to leave bus service for one more summer. So that's the last passenger trains in 1931. Not going into this in detail, but in the 1940s, there was some great partnerships between resort owners and hatcheries. You had the Woodruff Fish Hatchery, the Presque Isle Walleye Rearing Ponds, the Five Lake Escanaba Project, and the Vilas County Sportsman Club. So some great stuff was happening with resort owners who obviously wanted strong fisheries for their guests. Pat Wilsey, Bruce's father, and Sid Doolittle in the 1940s, they worked really hard as part of the Chamber of Commerce to promote Boulder Junction. They created booklets, they went to sports shows around the Midwest, and they organized the Vilas County Sportsman Club and a lot more. So really the 1940s is when the Chamber of Commerce really went all out, starting to promote Boulder Junction. Pat and Kelly Wilsey buy White Birch Lodge on White Birch Lake in 1942. And I'm not gonna go into detail because Susie's already done an entire hour-long program about Aqualand. So Aqualand starts right around then too. 1946, the airport is ready for service. That actually surprised me. I didn't realize it was as far back. And then I thought I just threw two more random ones in here because we could go on and on for forever with this timeline. But in 1949, Wisconsin sold more non-resident fishing licenses than any other state in the country. I don't know what those statistics are like now. I did not do that research. And then even though the muskie capital of the world trademark was not a US patent until 1971, the state of Wisconsin allowed us to start using it in 1950. So I am starting about that time period. We're talking about the early history. So Buckshot has a great book called Hall of Fame Brothers, The Lives and Times of Legendary Northern Wisconsin Fishing Guides, Barefoot Porter and Howard Pop Dean. And he does a great synopsis of kind of how this started. Like Wisconsin fishing guides were unemployed lumberjacks. They had time on their hands when they weren't doing logging. But by the late 1800s, a few out-of-work lumberjacks began guiding city slickers who were slowly discovering the rumors of an untapped region of pristine lakes up north were true. Then the first ripple of tourism in northern Wisconsin began as a result of those fishing guides. And then it reshaped the entire Northwoods of Wisconsin. This is not just Boulder Junction. This is the whole Northwoods. There's books written about the whole Northwoods, not just Boulder Junction. By the time the Roaring Twenties arrived, tourism based almost entirely on fishing had replaced logging as the North's main economic engine. So you see that shift. The earliest, I had to put this in just because everybody's talking about money right now. Everybody's talking about the cost of everything right now. The earliest recorded wages for a guide date back to the 1880s and 90s, when a few resorts advertised fishing guides were available for hire. Back then, rates for guides ranged from $2 to $4 a day. Wages for those earliest professional paddlers, rowers, noon chefs, and fish finders slowly inched upward, and guides were receiving $6 per day when World War II broke out. By the mid-50s, guides' daily wages had leapt to $20 per day. And I don't know what the going rate is right now. This book was written in
$5.50.
2019, guessing around $400 a day.
$5.50, I asked today.
$5.50 a day, $5.50 a day. So times have changed. So it's interesting how World War II, the middle class tourism kind of grew out of World War II. We started out with fancier resorts, catering to just a certain clientele who could afford to come up here. And then the mom and pop resorts, Buckshot talks about this in his book, the mom and pop resorts start, and they're not as fancy. Middle class can afford to come up here, and they start coming up here a lot. I am not going to read this whole thing. First of all, it's a long, but it's also way too small on my computer. This is from the Boulder Junction in the early years, the first history book that the Friends of the Library did. And it's from a description of fishing guides, which appeared in the original Boulder Junction Chamber of Commerce promotional booklets of the late 1940s. And I'll just read the first sentence because I love it. One of the most pleasant of all human associations is that of the sportsman and his Boulder Junction guide. Like when you talk about the best first sentence of a book, isn't that the greatest first sentence of a book? So this is very flowery language about how great it is to employ a fishing guide and what a great experience it is to use a fishing guide. Tom Newcomb, I took this quote from that Guides of Wisconsin Northwoods by Tom Hollitz. Tom Newcomb said, "I love it. You can make a lot more money doing other things, believe me. I look at my guiding book on Labor Day and look at the names of my customers. They're the same ones after 20 years. I think of all those pleasurable moments, there must be something to it." And there is something to it. And then I'm not sure I know this is kind of blurry, but this is in the history book. This is the Boulder Junction license guides that was listed in advertising before 1950. Bruce Wilsey is on this list. And I'm so thankful he's here tonight. Then you go to the later guides. This is from, I can't find the year. There's a year on here, but it's way too small printing. I apologize. There are more guides that would have been available to come tonight that are still with us. But it would have been, like I said, we would be here till probably not 10 p.m., more like midnight if we invited everyone to come talk. So at some point, possibly we can have some continuations of these talks, maybe an entire day seminar with guides, that kind of thing. And then Lanny shared this with me. This is the Boulder Junction Guides Association that your father, John, had. Now I'm just going to go through, and we're not going to talk about each of these people, but I think it's very, very cool that there are several Boulder Junction guides who have been inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame in Hayward, Wisconsin. And of course, one of the most famous is Porter Dean. We cannot talk about him too much because that would be, again, a whole program, and maybe we'll do that program next year. Tom Newcomb, who I had that quote from. Mr. Buckshot over there, he's there, and then his was 2001. Jed Jolin, Van Jolin, Donald Keister, Tom Swanson, who's with us tonight, inducted in 2011. Todd Gessner, who was inducted in 2011. Dwayne Horseman, inducted in 2012. Russell Smitty Smith, he could not be with us tonight, but he did answer some questions for me, which I'm going to read his answers. Oops, I missed one. I'm doing this too quickly. Which is the one I missed? That man right there. I can't find the slide for it, but Pete Olson was inducted into that. I must have missed that slide. I am so sorry. Pete Olson was also a Boulder Junction a fisherman that was inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. So I'm sorry, I missed that slide, but you are also in the Hall of Fame, Mr. Olson.
Talking about the Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame. So we have our guests tonight, and I am going to ask each of these guests questions. Obviously, Eddie Walters cannot speak from where he is right now, but Lanny is going to read some of the questions that he was asked in Tom Hollitz's book. We're going to go one guide at a time. I'm going to ask them the questions. I'm going to give each of them a chance to answer the questions, and then if there's time at the end, which I'm hoping we will have time because I'm trying to go quickly, we will let all of you ask them questions, but also if you have any stories to tell at the end, that would be great. So give me a second. I have to stop sharing this screen. I want to be able for the people on Zoom to see when everybody's talking. So I'm going to start. Oh, give me a second. I have to get my slide back up so I know where I am. I am going to start with Lynette Ida Nelson, and she's going to talk about her grandpa, Eddie Walters.
Good evening. First of all, I am not a guide, just the granddaughter and daughter of guides, and happy to share my grandpa's story that was in this book, which was published in 1976, so almost 50 years ago. And so I'm just going to read a few of the questions that were asked of him and what his answer was. He was born in 1911. He passed away in 1999, so 25 years ago. He was born in Marathon County of Wisconsin, east of Wausau, and he moved to Boulder Junction in 1935. In order to make money during hard times, Walters hunted for bounty. A coyote brought in $20 and a bobcat $5. In 1936, Walters started guiding and started sharing a vast amount of knowledge about the waters of the North Woods. Although his main occupation was plumbing, Walters was one guide whose customers kept returning. During the winter, he filled his guidebook with the names while he was at his beautiful home overlooking Fish Trap Lake. He's married, has 3 daughters, and in 1976, it said he charges $40 for guiding and can be reached at his phone number. I checked with a guide today I work with at school, and he said $550 is the rate today for a full day of guiding. One of the questions was, what is the biggest fish you ever caught? My grandpa's reply, a muskie, 50 inches and 40 pounds. That was in 1942. Another one, do you have that one? This one was captioned, what the well-dressed muskie guide wore in 1940. Strapped to Ed's hip is a .32 Iver Johnson used to shoot muskies at boatside. In retrospect, Walter said he was glad to see the use of gun banned for muskies. Besides being dangerous, muskie losses were greater as many of the trophy fish sunk after shooting. Eddie, is there any one good secret for muskie fishing? All I can say to young muskie fishermen, you've got to stay with them. You can't give up. It's hard work. Spend a lot of time on the water. And let's see, the final question he had, where do you look for muskie? And my grandpa said, they like the weeds, any weeds. I think the muskie is like a tiger or the other animals who wait for prey and are lurking by the weeds. The muskie can wait for the smaller fish and eat. They lay idle and protect that spot. And when the prey comes within striking range, that's when they come out. I used to watch the muskies in the pond at Aqualand. They just lie there in the water, never moving. Then one of the kids would toss a frog in, and that's when whammo. Also, when you bring a bucktail, what action? I change the action. Never take a bucktail out of the water as soon as it gets to the boat. Always make a U or a figure 8. I've taken fish up to 29 pounds right at the boat. Years ago, I would have jerked that right from the muskie's mouth, right at the boat. After years of experience, I wait right at the boat until the muskie closes its mouth. And those were just a few questions back from 76 and that.
Thank you. The next guest we're going to talk to is Bruce Wilsey. He is the son of Pat and Kelly, and he's married to Jody, who's here, and father to Carrie and Becky and Susan, who's also here tonight, former owner of White Birch Village and the vice president of Aqualand. There's some great pictures I'm going to try to remember. So I'm going to ask the questions. I don't have a timer. Bruce is going to use a microphone so we can hear. So these are the questions I would want to ask, but I'm not a fisherman. I just want to know about their life and why they got into this. So the first question is, how old were you when you started fishing?
Oh, I was a very, very old 4. My dad gave me a cane pole with a worm on it and carried me out and put me on a rock in the middle of what was that? The big river down in Shawano. And well, maybe that one works better. Anyway, so then I just kind of coasted along until I was 10, and then I got my first muskie. It was just 40 inches and 20 pounds, and since then it's been quite a chase. I would like to comment though a little bit on some of the equipment that was used early. This was before the advent of the steel rod. Every rod pole was anyway, they're all bamboo. And the exciting part was that at lunchtime, you get in, the first thing that everybody did was run around the wood, drapes their line on the rods, off of the reels, because it was all straight line and silk line, and if you didn't dry it, it wouldn't make it through the day without breaking off. It just kind of fall apart. And I can hear that I was introduced to spinning tackle by a German doctor from German Army in World War, it must have been 1. And when he came over this country, he brought his bamboo spinning rod along and a anyway, the reel that was made in Spain, France. And some days we'd get to go fishing and he'd say, well, we're gonna go muskie fishing today, but I'm casting minnows on my fly rod. So when we go out cast minnows on the fly rod, then we caught muskies. But it was different. Thursday was a bad day. We couldn't go right away because he had to clean his toenails. And another comment on that I spent a lot of time with underwater was the man that invented the good Rawlings Sporting Goods baseball gloves. First baseman, fielders glove, and mitt. And one day on an area lake, he and his son and I by noon had 26 muskies in the boat. So we left that lake because we were getting tired of pulling them in. It was, we only caught 8 in the afternoon. But it was, this business is starting out at $2. I remember that when it started, it was the Sid Doolittle happened to be the big honcho that dictated the price for guiding in the Boulder area, because he would usually have anywhere from 15 to 30 guides on his staff at all times. And he said the junior guide's $3, senior guide's $7. Then the junior guide said, well, we're doing just as hard to work as the senior guide, therefore we want $7 too. I was interested in this 55 or $550. That isn't gonna get me back in the boat.
Bruce, who was your mentor? Who got you into guiding?
Well, I don't know that I had a mentor, but we had some locals in Star Lake that were quite reputable guys, and Bart Zellerman and Cyril Olson and Johnny Olson. And I was usually the second guide when there was a party around, so I just kind of trailed along behind them and watched how they did it. And it seemed to pay off. However, one incident that has to be mentioned of Johnny Olson, the other guy that coming out to our resort was Johnny Walker, and he got right there, White Sand Lake out here, and here was Johnny Olson standing beside the road scratching his head. Well, what's the matter, Johnny? What's wrong? He says, I lost my boat. But here was a boat back in the woods about 100 yards. He forgot to close the ball on the head. These are just some of the many things that happen.
So Bruce, did you fish with any famous clients?
Well, probably the most, yeah, right, I did. I fished with a fella, he owned the whole country, the Crown Prince of Monaco. And you wouldn't have known him, he could have blended in here. He just didn't look anything different than a plain ordinary street person. In his sloppy clothes, and he wasn't fancy dressed, he didn't wave his arms and shout and whistle and yell. But he just acted like everybody else.
So I heard you use the phrase area lake.
Pardon?
I heard you use the phrase area lake. It's kind of like banana lake. Would you be willing to tell us what your favorite fishing lake is?
No.
Gotta try.
Islands County Lake.
Okay, I'll give you an easier. What is your favorite fish to try to catch? Or to catch?
Well, I think my wife and I had one of my favorite fishes for lunch the other day, about a 10-inch brook trout.
That sounds very good.
Pretty tasty, pretty tasty. We've got a next door neighbor, my grandson, who has fished just about every stream there is where there's water in Upper Michigan. He goes to a different one each time he goes out, and he always comes back with trout. But he has that thing. And then his son, our grandson, lives down near Eau Claire, and he said there's a real great place just off of I-94 where this place, so you can park for fishing in the stream there. And he said he's gone there and he's got some 15, 16-inch brook trout in there, you know, and it's kind of fun.
So one last question. And we've already heard what Eddie Walters said. What is the one key, just one key to becoming a good fisherman? The one thing, if I just needed to know one thing about being a good fisherman.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that makes a good fisherman, but more than anything, is keep your bait in the water.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. Thank you, Bruce, and you guys will have a chance to ask him more questions, hopefully at the end. Thank you so much, Bruce. I'm so glad you were here with us tonight. Yeah. Our next guest tonight is Tom Swanson, and as I mentioned earlier, he is the son of Don and Marion, and he was inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame in Hayward in 2011, and I adore this picture. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, that is just amazing. It's your youngest fishing picture that you gave me to use. I love it. So that leads really well into my first question. How old were you when you started fishing?
My father said I was 8, but I think maybe 10. But it was the first time somebody gave me some money to take them fishing. I thought that's the greatest thing in the world. And then as I got to be a teenager, I think minimum wage was like $1.65, and I was making $30 a day. So I thought, I'll fish 7 days a week. I just really enjoyed what I'm doing.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to turn your mic up. Who was your mentor?
I had so many because unfortunately my grandfather was a depot agent here in Boulder Junction. And I only found out about 10 years ago that he got fired. And come to find out, you know, he loved to fish and hunt, just, maybe that's where I got this from. But he was out fishing or hunting or doing something, and the train came to Boulder Junction and it had a depot agent. And, he didn't show up to help the train, so they fired him. But he loved being here. So he, like many other people, started building a resort. And you, those of you who just bought places up in North Woods and know what they cost you. My grandfather bought a 3-bedroom house, 2 guest cottages, a garage, and 1,000 feet of frontage in White Sand Lake for $6,000. So anyway, they were operating that as the American Plan Resort. My grandmother passed away when I was quite young, and so my father and mother moved here to help run the resort. Well, every day there was guides coming and going, and I just loved, not so much in the morning, but I love listening to the fishing stories at night. And I could just, it was great, and I thought, I wanna do what those guys are doing because they're really enjoying it.
So what famous clients did you fish with?
I think probably Governor Thompson, Tommy Thompson. He brought a check up here to Boulder Junction to start these bicycle trails. And, the governor was known for going fishing opening day of quite a few places in North Woods, but he held a record of never catching a walleye. I'll take care of that. I had a wonderful time, spent about 3 hours with the governor, and his record held up. I didn't catch a walleye either. You know, this was, when I was young, a fishing area. That's what people came here for. They didn't come to shop, they didn't come to bicycle, they just came here to fish. Well, the governor brought this money up here, and one of the changes in Northwood was this bicycle trail. I thought, well, that is never gonna make any money up here. And the first 2 years I was pretty right, it didn't. But by the 3rd year, it got pretty popular. So much for being a wise fishing guide.
So I'm gonna sneak it in here when you're not paying attention. What's your favorite lake?
Well, my favorite lake's Trout Lake. I love fishing Trout Lake. It's got some huge fish in it. It's not where my biggest fish came from, but overall, it's probably as nice a lake as we have around here.
So what's your favorite fish?
I think probably walleyes. I love catching big muskies. It's a great thrill. But sooner or later, anybody can catch a muskie. You just keep casting in, one will bite. But to consistently catch walleyes, I never could figure out why some guides worked all the time and some guides only worked part of the time. And well, some guides only wanted to muskie fish. Not everybody wanted to muskie fish. So a lot of them didn't fish because they couldn't catch walleyes. And I thought, well, I guess if I'm gonna do this all the time, I'm gonna have to learn to catch muskies and walleyes.
So one last question, and same one I just asked Bruce. What is the one key to becoming a good fisherman?
Think knowledge of the water that you're fishing. In about 1962 or 63, I bought a Lowrance green box. And that truly is what got me into the Hall of Fame. At that time, I had boat, motor, trailer, car. I had a Cypress wood guide boat. I had a 52 Chevrolet Woody, and I had $150 in all of it. So I bought this green box for $95, which was quite an investment in those days for me. And it got me to learn what the bottom of the lake was. Before that, guides were basically shoreline fishermen. You fished what you could see. And there was so much structure in these glacial lakes up here. I used to laugh. People go by me and I just stopped fishing. They'd be laughing. You could hear them over the motor about it. What's he doing out here? There's no fish out here. But the whole bottom of the lake had all these humps in them, and that little green box that made a lot of money for me.
Thank you so much, Tom. And again, we'll have a chance to ask questions later. I'm gonna move on to our next guest. Leon, Andy, Buckshot, choose a name. I'm gonna go with Buckshot. He received his first guide license in 1953. He was an educator from 1960 to 1996. And he also has written a whole bunch of articles and books about fishing in the outdoors. I don't have all of them on the table over there, but I have quite a few of Buckshot's books over on the table. We have them in the library. And then in 2001, he was inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. And so I'm gonna do just like I did with everyone else. First question, how old were you when you started fishing?
I'm 6 years old. My parents opened a resort for the first time. I'm from Saint Germain, by the way, but I probably fished around Boulder Junction when I did down there. But anyway, I started guiding a customer, so to speak, on a little 26-acre lake that we called Casomo. And my pay was usually a bottle of pop or a stick of gum. I started following my father, who was a famous guide in the Saint Germain area, when I was 14, getting money for the first time, $5 a day, and watching him catch fish in the other boat, wondering why I didn't. When I was 16, I finally got a guide's license, so actually I was legal for the first time. Like my father, who had guided for a number of years ahead of me, he kept a diary of every day he was on the water, who he was with, where they fished, what the weather was, what they caught, and anything unusual that happened. And he made me, under penalty of death, to start doing the same thing when I got my first guide license in '53, which I continue to do. I now have over 5,000 days registered in that book. So it isn't that my mind is so great. I've got everything written down.
That's a smart way to do it. Do you have a mentor, like one mentor that you think would?
My father definitely was my mentor because he taught me how to cook shortletch, which is something that's just about died out now. And by watching him where he fished on his favorite lakes, that got me started. Unfortunately, my dad passed away with a heart attack when he was only 52. So I was still struggling to figure out this whole thing, and Pop Dean and Porter Dean took me under their wing because I was very friendly with their families, and helped me to be 60 years between the oars.
That reminds me, you did have, one of your books was written about what you fished out of for many years.
Well, the wooden boat rollers, I had buried. I think I wore out about 4 wooden boats. I also, towards the middle of my career, I think to get me into some back edge lakes. I left to fish the smaller lakes, get away from all the traffic when the lake started getting busy. I bought a Grumman sport boat, and I think there's one sitting out in the parking lot right now that Nick Vanderpyre owns, and I still got that one. But that was a lot lighter, but they made it let a lot more noise too. But I ended my career still rowing somewhat, although I did have electric motor by then. I have to make that clear. That helped extend my career quite a bit, that little electric motor. I say I went through about 4 or 5 wooden boats over the years.
So who is your most famous client?
Well, I think probably the original owner of Milwaukee Bucks, Wes Pavlon, who got the Bucks first team. He got the franchise for $90,000, and I fished with him for 35 years. I also fished with comedian Alan King. Some of the older people will probably remember him. And other than that, I looked at all my regular customers as being famous people.
Okay, favorite lake?
That's going to surprise you, but the famous fishing is down a lake, is the river, Wisconsin River.
I never thought of
Everything in
that.
it, you don't know what's going to come on your hook when you start fishing in Wisconsin.
And
And there's some stretches on it that hardly anybody gets into. And that's where that little boat comes in handy,
what about favorite fish?
smallmouth bass. But like my buddy, but the Radovi said, the best thing eating fish is cook. And if I could just go fishing by myself, which I did a lot, it was on a brook cross stream.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna ask you guys one more question later, but I'm gonna move along to the next guide on our list. Give me 1 second here. So Russ Smitty Smith, technically is not from Boulder Junction, but I was, recommended by several people in town that I should talk about him. He is, the inventor of the Smitty Bait. He has the Smitty Bait and Guide Service, which has been making hand-making wooden baits and musky tackle since 1970. He was also inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame in 2012. And Russ had a banquet tonight. I can't remember what kind, but he had a banquet tonight. So I asked him to answer some of the same questions I've asked these gentlemen tonight. So I asked Russ, how old were you when you started fishing? And he said 6 years. Who was your mentor who got you into guiding? And this one was completely different than everyone else. He said all the different sport shop owners. So I don't think any of you answered it that same way tonight. And then what is the one key to becoming a good fisherman? And my husband would also tell you this, spending time on the water. If you don't have time to be on the water, you're not gonna get a lot of practice. And then I asked what famous clients he had. I actually could not read his handwriting, so I had to look some of these up so I would say their names correctly. He fished with some of the Apollo astronauts, Paul Weitz, Deke Slayton, and Bob Parker. Milwaukee Brewer pitcher Mike Caldwell, and pro hockey great, and I believe it's Gary Suter, I'm sorry, I'm just horrible with sports stuff. I asked him what the biggest fish he ever caught was and what size. It was a 49-inch muskie. No surprise, his favorite kind of fish to catch is the muskie, and his favorite lake is Trout Lake. There seems to be a theme going on tonight with Trout Lake, which does not surprise me. So I'm sorry he could not be with us tonight, but I did want to keep him, oops, I missed his snapshots. Did want to make sure we did include him tonight. And then our next guest is John Beda, who is Lanny's, Troy's, Renee's, and Wes's father. He started guiding in 1968 and he guided for 45 plus years. And he could not be here tonight, but we did a little magic trick with technology and Lanny did a voice recording of him, asking him these questions. So I am going to try to hope my technology cooperates and we're going to play this recording.
How old were you when you started fishing?
My best recollection is 5 or 6 years old.
Who was your mentor when you got into guiding?
My dad, who owned a resort and guided in Canada, where I grew up. And my father-in-law, Ed Walters, who was a famous guide in Boulder Junction. My uncle John Sherwinski, who owned Jesse and Johnny's, where the Guides Inn is now. And a lot of the guides, Tom Newcomb, Bill Gleason, Swanee, Forrest Johnson, Porter Dean would come in and they would share information with the younger guides. And I have the pleasure of being able to rebuild boats with Porter in the wintertime. And Porter actually hired me quite a few times for double parties. And there was a group of doctors that came up, Doc Eckert, and we would always fish together in a big group of boats, and it was fun going out with Porter and seeing some of his landmarks and sharing them with us.
What is one key to becoming a good fisherman?
Be patient. Some days chickens, some days feathers.
Did you ever fish with any famous clients? If so, who?
Through the years, I fished with many Green Bay Packers. And some of the ones that I really liked and fished with quite a bit was William Henderson, Big Gilbert Brown, the Grave Digger, Frankie Winters, who was the center for the Packers, Ryan Longwell and his wife, who was the kicker for the Packers, and Eugene Robinson, who was one of the Super Bowl players, and actually saw my granddaughter when she was very young and commented on how cute she was. Yeah.
Any other famous clients?
And I fished with John Riggins from the Washington Redskins. They called him the Diesel. He was the MVP of a Super Bowl when they played Miami. Gil Brandt, who used to come to Forest Lodge. And he was Dallas Cowboys general manager. Mike Caldwell, who was a Brewer pitcher when they played the World Series. And his nickname was the Spitter. And he used to bring up his wife and we'd fish together. And I fished with Paul Ryan, who was Speaker of the House, and his family. A very nice family, 2 boys and a girl.
What is the biggest fish you ever caught and what size?
My personal best that I actually caught myself is a muskie that was 50.5 inches, 31 pounds. And walleye was a 31.5 inch, 12.25 pounds. Back in the day when a guy had hooked a muskie, was supposed to pass the bull to the customer, which I did many times, and probably had a 36-pound fish in the boat.
What is your favorite kind of fish to catch or try to catch?
I love walleye fishing. Walleye is the best eating. And as Porter Dean always said, it's your bread and butter fish. Meaning that you could eat them and it's the fish that the customers wanted to take home.
Do you have a favorite lake to fish that you could share?
I always told people Trout Lake many times because it's so big and rocky. It's one of the best lakes up here. The other lake that I really liked was Crab Lake, which is probably one of the first lakes settled up here. And there's many homes that are set back in the deep woods there that you don't see from the lake. There's quite a few island homes. And every pier has an American flag at the end of it. There are many bays and very picturesque, and the lake is full of rocks. Like Trout Lake, and working at the marina when I did, there was always somebody come in with a broken propeller. You would see Trout Lake or Crab Lake, and probably be right most of the time.
What keeps you guiding all these years?
I'm retired now with health issues, but I love to fish. I like fishing with so many of the family through the years and fishing with kids, nice people. I had a couple of clients that, we call them party, and now they call them clients, but the longest was 38 years. And probably still keep in touch with a lot of them.
Any good fish stories?
When I was younger, growing up in Canada, at the resort, we had a big, long, permanent pier that had a bait well built into it, and my brother and I would seine minnows, and we sold minnows. And there was always a bunch in that live well, and always a few dead ones every day, and people would come down to the dock, and we'd take the dead ones out, and we had a resident northern that lived right close by, and we'd throw the dead minnows in the lake. And the northern would come up to get it, and we had an American water spaniel dog, Queenie, who would wait and then dive in at the fish. It's quite common.
If you could give,
I'm gonna stop that there just because I want to give the other guides a chance to answer some of the questions that John also answered. So I'm gonna go back to my sheet. I'm gonna give you each a chance to answer this question. We'll start at the end with Bruce. Any good fish stories?
Well,
I'm not starting without a no fish story.
Microphone.
We had a couple from Milwaukee there, guess, at the resort. I suppose I could use these here. We had a couple. Yes, of ours at the resort, Milwaukee attorney and his wife. And he told me one day, we stopped going up to Bent's Camp on Tenderfoot Lake in 1911 because we felt the lake was fished out. Now, this is before DNR even got a chance to screw things up. But, no, probably not that. I think I switched about 1984 is when the guiding changed. Anyway, for a number of guides. Up to that time, a lot of muskie fishing was road trolling. And then we got these bigger boats that we have now, and you don't row them, you don't row trollers. And I mean, you get out, you get a couple people in there, a couple average, of maybe 500 pounds between husband and wife. And after 7 or 8 hours going around the lake, you get kind of tired. And then you get near the landing, and Dad says, "Oh, can we go around the lake one more time?" Yeah, and that's usual punchline for them, but no, the first boat I bought, Rick Backen and I were at Jolin's Marina the same day. And there are 2 boats there, and Rick said, "Which one do you want?" I thought, "I don't care, which one do you want?" "Well, I don't care." I said, "Well, 13's in that serial number on that boat, that's a good number in our family, I'll take that one." So I'm still have that boat, and it's 1986 I got it. About 2 years ago, my wife said, "You know, I think it's about time that you got a different motor, because you're gonna be on the lake somewhere, and with that motor that's 37 years old, it's gonna rot in, you're not gonna be able to get in." So I ordered a new motor. And the new motor costs the same as the boat motor that turned it into the original. But it's been good. The boat is, I like Buckshot's boat, sitting on the trailer in the garage. It's got the trickle charger on it so that it is ready to go at a minute like that, and it will start immediately. But I don't want to bother the fish too much anymore. I don't know. I look at the pictures that we see on the wall, like Sherry's got here, from the ones that guess at the resort. And let's face it, folks, it just ain't there no more. The walleye limit back in 50 years, 60 years ago, it was 7 walleyes a day. Now it's about 7 a week. They manage some lakes like Escanaba Lake over here, which used to be Rock Lake. And about 10 years ago, they changed it because, and Buckshot caught many walleyes in there. I know I used to have to wait till he moved off the spots right next to us. But it was an excellent walleye lake. You get 30, 40 walleyes a day without any sweat at all. And they changed it to new rules. 1 fish per day, 28-inch minimum size. They haven't had a legal walleye over there in 10 years. But and every now and then it seems as if the fish manager over there commits suicide. I don't know what it is, but it must be the intensity from going to school down at Stevens Point, perhaps.
I am gonna give Buckshot a turn. That's a whole nother seminar. That is a whole nother seminar. I'm gonna give Buckshot, if you wanna pass the microphone to Buckshot. Okay, Buckshot, you have how many books?
19.
So when I say, do you know a good fish story? I know you have a lot. So can you pick your favorite fish story?
Well, sometimes the favorite story, it comes from fishing, not the fish. And there's some really hilarious things that happen out in the water. And I'd like to tell you the one that sticks in my mind. I had 2 of my good customers from Indiana that I've been fishing with. In fact, they still come up and use my boat to fish out of. I've fished with them for over 35 years. But the brother-in-law was, we called him Festus because he lived in southern Indiana and he had a southern accent. And he was a character. He had a hat very similar to mine, a felt hat, but it kind of came to a point at the top. And he came up, it was in Memorial, Labor Day weekend. And we were on the back of one of our little bass lakes and over in Arborvitae and had it all to ourselves, but we were rolling along. And Festus had wrist surgery just before he came out, but he had a brace on his wrist. And he had bought a brand new rod and reel, casting reel. He was really proud of that. So we got about 3/4 of the way around the lake and he went to cast and out goes the rod. Now, he was fishing off the right side, of this side of the boat. I was rowing and looking out this and watching like the other guy. So I didn't actually see the rod fly, but I felt the boat go like this and I heard splash. And I looked, Festus was gone. The only thing was left was his hat was floating on the water next to the boat. And I looked over the side and his bald spot just kept getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer as it went down. So I said to his brother-in-law, I says, can he fish? Can he swim? And he said, well, we're gonna find out. So I got a little panicky and I didn't want to be the first guy in northern Wisconsin who lost a client by drowning. So I'm looking over the side now and I see this spot getting brighter and up it comes. And a fish pole comes up with a hand, and he's got his rod and reel. So I dragged him to shore, got him in the boat, we rode back across to where the car was parked, the truck was parked, and I got the fire going, and he took off all his clothes, and he had them hanging on sticks all around the fire, and he's standing there in his birthday suit. Well, I'm cooking a shore lunch, and we usually take that as a funny, you had to be there.
That is a good one. I'm gonna have you pass the microphone or Tom take a microphone. And Tom, what is your favorite? And it doesn't have to be a fish story, it can be a fishing story.
I had 2 customers from New York that came in 3 times a year to fish with me. Great fishermen, just nice guys and great fishermen, took good care of me, we caught a lot of fish over the years. We were out on Muskellunge Lake one day and it was not known to be a walleye lake and in a short time period, I caught 2 really nice walleyes. I put my rod down and I was pretty young then. And these 2 guys were probably the 2 best walleye fishermen I ever had in my boat because once all I had to do is find them and they'd take over the rest. The bag limit then was 5 walleyes a day. I couldn't quite get the cover closed on the live well when we quit. And then I was so excited, the fish were coming so fast, they were so big. And it was probably my one and only opportunity to ever catch 100 pounds of walleye in one day. You can't ever do that anymore because of the decreased limits. But I had 15 walleyes that weighed 97 pounds. And that was really an exciting day on the water for me.
Wow, that's amazing. I think I left off with John's interview right when he was is that where I left off? That he was about to answer the question. Let me go back to John's interview.
Advice to other fishermen, what would it,
He did already answer that question, sorry. Before I open it up to the audience, I have one more question. Because I feel like there was a vein of running this whole shore lunch. And I will admit, I go for the shore lunch and I don't fish. I read a book in the boat and then I'm so excited for the shore lunch. So I heard there's a lot of controversy about what makes the best shore lunch. I know Porter Dean had some secrets about what the best one was, so do any of you have a secret for what makes the best shore lunch?
The number 1 clue, a nice fire.
So it's not sushi, yeah? Anyone else have a great best shore lunch?
No, the last few years, my guy just told people, you want to come and fish with me? We're gonna go fishing. If you want me to cook for you, then we'll go fishing some other time. I really hated it.
Buckshot?
Oh, I love the shore lunch. You got to know your customers a lot better while they're relaxing with a beer in their hand, under a shady tree. Yeah, the shore lunch was great. And one of the favorite ones I learned from Pop Bean was a fish chowder. Now that one took about a 2-hour one. So you have to tell people if they want fish chowder, we'll do it, but bring extra beer in the cooler because we're gonna take that shore for a long time. One time, but the four of us were fishing on Big Saint Germain Lake. Barb Heeler and Pop Dean and, you want me to,
Sorry, they can't hear you, sorry.
well, anyway, there were four guys on the party and, two of the guys were fishing for walleyes for lunch and, they came in at lunchtime and no fish in the stringer. And Pop and I came in, between the two boats, we had 3 legal muskies. So Pop took the smallest muskie, which the one that about 30, that back then, it's to the 60, by the way, 1960s, when everybody kept them. So he filleted one half off of that and made his chowder. It was excellent. So now we get back to Ed Gabe's Resort, which was the resort to be at down in St. Germain years ago, along with the one in Plum Lake, Bear Lake Stainer Lodge. But so at the end of the day, we had 3 muskies and my boat also came up with a 7-pound walleye that hit a crankbait. So we pulled in by the kitchen and they would ring the bell and all the customers would come down to see what the guides had. So we lined up and we had our three muskies. Well, we had 2.5 muskies. We had the half one. Well, I held that one so that the good side was up. So there was people all around with their cocktails and one woman said, she had actually had a little bit too much to drink at that time. And she said, "Oh my God, I didn't think these fish got so big in this lake." And Pop says, "Big, these aren't big with us. These are just average size." He says that one that young Anderson told me here, he says, if he got it up to the side of the boat, a big one come up and grabbed it and tried to take it away from him. And she said, "Oh, stop it." So he flips the fish over and all you got is backbone and guts, you know, and she screamed and took off and, "Oh, there goes."
Okay, oh goodness. I'm gonna go ahead now and I'm gonna open this up to the audience and feel free to ask questions and you can ask a specific person or just ask it to the whole panel. I know people have to have questions. Come
Started with the bell.
I'd
Oh,
like
sorry.
to know what the guys think of these nice metal flake boats with these great big engines.
What do you feel about those fancy boats? The big engines? Use
That's why
the microphone, please. Sorry.
That's why I started getting off the big lakes about 1970 and dragging my customers back into some of these little, I call them honey holes.
Oh, Tom, did you have it? Tom has an answer. Just like Tom wants to answer that question.
These are public lakes. And, you know, we all have our rights to be there. But I'll tell you what, when you got really hang on to the seat because the boat coming alongside has got this big wake, it's maybe time to do something about it.
Sorry, sir, you can ask.
What's the preferred baits for both walleye and muskie, live, artificial, or whatever, just in general terms?
I think muskie fishing probably, bucktails are, you know, they came out with all these new rods and reels. I decided I've quit guiding now for 3 years, but about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided, you know, maybe I needed one new rod and reel in my life. And I looked at it, by the time I got through, I had $800 spent, and I said, no, I don't think I need that. Well, to throw these big, huge lakes, these baits, these pounders, you need rods like that. But muskies are still muskies, and you can still catch a muskie on an 8-inch bucket. But as far as walleyes go, minnows in the spring, night crawlers in the summer, and minnows again in the fall. That was what pretty much I did.
Back there.
Would you tell us about your favorite old time bait shops?
Favorite old time bait shops?
Well, I bought most of my bait from Pat's Bait Box in Plum Lake, but over by Joe Freilich originally. He started it in the 1930s and went out of business in '96. And they let the guides come in and take their old bait out of the buckets. After Pat closed his bait shop down, We didn't have a real good one that I like to go to, so I trapped my own minnows back then. And, dug my own worms.
Bruce or Tom, do you have a favorite bait shop?
No, I didn't really care, where the grocery store is in Boulder now, used to be a Standard Oil gas station. Owned by Wally Joel, and then he had 8 or 9 tanks and back with bait, and I bought most of my bait from him.
Any other questions? Really? Oh, back there.
I have a question, but this is more of a personal thing for me. My father was Jules Novak when he was a fishing guide in Presque Isle. And I know that Buckshot knew him, but I was wondering if maybe the other guys knew him. I've been away in the military, my wife and I, for 30 years. We just moved back to the community, so I saw you guys were having this, and I was curious to hear the story. But that's a more personal thing, maybe I can talk to you guys.
What was his name again?
Jules Novak.
Jules Novak? So you knew him, Buckshot?
Yeah, Jules was like 4 feet 11, I believe, and he was a hell of a lot bigger man than that. I got to interview him at his home on the island, way back when I was first starting my writing, and he's one of the ones that I put in one of my books called Legends of the Lakes, and I picked 10 of the guys that all in my area. Jules was the one that was out of the area, but he was so unique and had so many stories to tell that I just had to interview him and put him in a book as one of the 10 people that I knew really well. And you didn't happen to go in my classroom, too, did you?
I was in your social studies class.
You were a little smaller back then.
So, Lanny had a story for me about the musky bell.
Ask them to tell it. Didn't most
So-
resorts have one?
What, the story about the musky bell, when you got back from fishing, there was a musky bell?
Go ahead, I can't hear it.
Yeah, I think in most of the resorts had some sort of a thing to let the people know that the guides are here, come look at the fish. And usually ringing the bell, yeah.
Very cool. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, did you have folks that came up and were just interested in catching panfish? And did you ever guide people for that?
I had a few, but not very many. Just seeing walleyes and muskies is what they wanted.
I had 2 brothers from Illinois that I started fishing with when they were in their 40s, and by the time they were in their 80s, we go down to catching bluegills and crappies.
So sorry, yes.
Does $550 a day make you wanna guide some more?
You gotta understand, I told you, I had $150, my boat, motor and trailer, okay? And I was making $30 a day. But if you go buy a new boat the way people want to fish on, it's gonna cost you $75,000 to $100,000.
Yep.
Plus you put a $20,000-$30,000 automobile farm, you got to do that to justify your price.
I picked up a floater of an aqua guide a couple weeks ago. And he was $550 a day. But the only thing you bring is other than your money is your rain gear and your jacket, whatever you need. He furnishes everything. So I don't know, I don't know the man, I don't know anything about him. But I can tell you one thing about guiding. There's a fellow south of Aqua, Greg Bowen, who was a reputable, reputed guide. He was supposed to be got lots and lots of big walleyes, and big walleyes was his thing. And so here he and his wife were killed in an automobile accident a couple weeks ago. And that kind of, I've never met him, I knew who he was, I've seen him and stuff. But here I got a new Fisherman magazine in the mail that day. And I opened it up and I looked at it, and all of a sudden, here's a picture of Greg Bowen in there, and an article about his walleye fishing. I mean, he kind of hit me kind of hard, and whether he was my kind of a guy or not, I don't know. But I always had kind of a different outlook on guiding, because when we had the resort, I had to go out and find the guides to hire who come in to fish with the people and the main place we always contacted for guides was there, this place just on the road here. It was at that time, it was called Jesse's and Johnny's. And you could usually find 6 or 8 guides in there, and some of them would be, well, they weren't all necessarily gonna make it the next day, but they were. It was interesting.
Thank you. No one else? I don't want to move on unless anybody has a question. So I had to put one picture of a woman with a fish in this program. Come on. It was all men until now. There actually are some great women fishermen out there. There are women fisher persons out there. And there's some great stories about Gypsy Rose Lee fishing with Porter Dean. So that could be another program. But I just wanted to thank the guides here tonight. I want to thank Lanny for helping us out, getting the history of Ed Walters and John Vida. Thank the Boulder Junction Area Historical Society for helping with creating these books, and all of the people that came before us that helped put these books together. We need to do this. We need to get this recorded. We need to get these in books, whether it's in books, audios, videos, like tonight's video now going to be on the website forever. And I also want to remind people again, stop at the museum. I had forgotten how much was in there. I went in to see what we could bring here tonight, and I was amazed at all the great stuff that's in the museum, not just about the guides, not just about fishing, but about Boulder Junction as a whole. We're gonna do Tom Brennemer next month, and then in October, we are gonna do Unsolved Mysteries of the Northwoods. We don't want to call it spooky or haunted because some are just downright weird and not spooky or haunted. So we are going to be doing that in October. And then I'm hoping over the winter, we get some ideas from all of you for ways we can keep going with this. We have 3 years until our 100th anniversary, and I'd like to keep the momentum rolling, that we keep doing these history programs and keep trying to keep history in Boulder Junction alive. And thank you so much for coming. Oh, you have one more? Yep.
One more question. We got a lot of legends up there. What do you gentlemen foresee in the future here in Boulder, or not just Boulder, but I mean, you fished all over St. Germain and Cisco Chain, and what do you see happening in the future?
Getting pretty political now.
Oh, I'm not looking for.
Our quality of fishing has gone down, I think, out here, especially for the walleyes and muskie. I thought that as a guide, I needed to build a business up, and the only way I could build a business up is to bring fish back to the resort at night.
Okay.
If I came back with a good catch, and I had a couple days open, no problem booking them. Then people started releasing fish, and I didn't like that. I really didn't. It really hurts to throw a 25-pound fish back in the lake. You can't brag about something if you don't have pictures of it or whatever it is. And I think when we started releasing all these fish, I anticipated the fishing becoming a lot better. And I don't believe it has. I really don't. I know the fishing pressure is heavier, but there's also less people keeping fish today than they used to.
Do you think, I mean, that the fish will eventually come back? I don't know the gentleman's name, he's always here at the flea market, but he's always talking about a reproduction of walleye.
Recently in the fish magazine that I get, a fish paper column from Wisconsin Sportsman or something like that. And all it mentions in there is articles that DNR is not able to, or will not. For example, they will no longer stock trout in their waters.
Yes, I know.
And now they're also expanding that they're not gonna be stocking muskies. And if you take the Minocqua chain, and they're saying that they couldn't be any natural reproduction in the Minocqua chain, and now those lakes there's nobody in this room that can convince me that there isn't a suitable walleye spawning area in one of those lakes around there with rocks and gravel shore, but they say it isn't possible, so they closed the season for 10 years, and they still don't have any walleyes. What's the matter? I would like to see DNR hire at least 25% of their biologists from out of Wisconsin. get somebody else's idea. The first I recall in the Milwaukee paper in the late, in about the 46 or 7, there's an article in there and a comment by one of the outdoor writers. He said, gentlemen, my friends, be aware, the biologists are coming, and the fishing has gone down ever since we got the first biologist. And the first biologist was a good guy too. But
Buckshot, do you want
Thank
to
you.
answer that question? Do you have anything to add?
I think that's off me. I think the overall quality of our water is suffering, particularly on the larger lakes. And where the lakes are connected, river by river, river to lake to lake to lake. Fertilizing their lawn, the people now used to leave the trees in front, now they gotta have a big lawn, they fertilize it, they get rain, where does that
Right.
stuff go? I live on Lost Creek, which flows from Lost Lake to Big Saint Germain. I've lived there since 1935. Or, pardon me, 39. I was born in 35, 39. And that water, we used to be gin and clear all year long. Now it's pea soup. And we used to have just thousands of walleyes would come up there in the spring to spawn in the gravel from Big Saint Germain Lake. In the last 25 years, I've not seen one walleye come up there to spawn. The red horse that used to come there have disappeared completely, gone. Why? It's gotta be water quality. I can't think of anything else. And a lot of that's because of these big boats. Turning up and the oil that comes from the gasoline and whatever, I think that's a big point.
well, I'd like to see them go around to, let's take, people buy a piece of property up your lake property. I'm gonna get cut the branches from those coming up here from south of Highway 10. And they build a property there. Okay. Well, they've got a nice house in the city with a big lawn and everything like that, and Mama said, oh, yeah, you gotta get those things, I can't see the lake, you can't, there's too many trees there, so they've got to thin out the trees, although there is a rule on how many you can have, how much space you have. So then they get the trees on the ocean, that brush down there, that, I can't see the edge of the shore, that brush has gotta go. And then pretty quick, you've got this brush out here and all this stuff, and it's really a nice view of the lake. But wouldn't it be nice if we have a nice green lawn going down to the lake? And so then they lay the lawn in, and then as Buckshot said, we gotta put the fertilizer on, we gotta put this on, we gotta put that on, and all runs in the lake. Let's take a water sample of all the lakes. Better than that, I would like to see them go around and have every place on the lake have a sewer test, a septic test. And if they can't pass it, give them 6 months to fill it in, and if they can't do it in 6 months, lock them down. I know it's a hard thing, and it hurts people to do that, but I can take you to a lake where they have their place is 100 yards or more from the water. And we're covering the whole face of this planet with blacktop and concrete. And there's not much place left for the water to soak into. It used to be that the water was clear within 4 feet of sand. With 4 feet of sand, it was clear, pure crystal.
I'm gonna end it at that, because I know we could talk about this a lot longer. And again, another program idea. So again, it's late, we went way over an hour. I thank you all, hopefully those cushions helped a little bit for this longer program. I thank you again, feel free, we're not closing up right away, feel free to keep looking at the displays, there's still treats left, there's still popcorn left, and I'm just so happy to see you guys tonight. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to these awesome gentlemen.